Justice. Recently, I put you on to a movie that I need you to talk about because one of the things that just came out was DC released the Suicide Squad. And a lot of people are saying that it is the best DCEU movie. I argued that I think just kind of based on characters alone, I think it's great. I think James Gunn did an amazing job with Suicide Squad. I think it's an easy like 8.5 to 9 out of 10. I love it. I think that it's good going forward. It's kind of changing the tone. But I asked you, and we'll talk about Suicide Squad after this. I asked you to watch the Snyder Cut, which you had no idea about because of circumstance. Maybe you just never were buying into the hype, never actually heard about it. What did you think about the Snyder Cut? What did you think about it? Because I said originally, and I don't know if you did it, if you watched the original theatrical version of Justice League before watching that Snyder Cut, so you could tell the big differences of it. What did you think of the Snyder Cut as a whole?
Well, originally, like, I guess to preface everything I'm about to say, I didn't become a Marvel comic book character fan until Black Panther came out, right? Because it was just like this big cultural, and obviously I have the Chadwick Boseman kind of tribute, but it was a cultural thing, right? And everybody was talking about how good it was, and I was just like, okay, I'm not a super big comic book guy, but whatever, right? And so I go to the movie and I'm like crying at the end. I'm like, this is such a great movie, right? Like the music, everything was just awesome. And so then I find myself going into a deep dive about Black Panther and Wakanda and everything else. And then all of a sudden, before I know it, I'm a full-blown Marvel stan, right? So then, from my Marvel fandom, I kind of was like, oh, I've always been a fan of Superman. I've never read comics or anything like that, but I've always been a fan of Superman.
Yeah.
So I watched the movie. It wasn't something that I was like super into at the time, but I did watch the movie, right? So then you told me about the Snyder Cut, and it wasn't something that I really had like an emotional attachment to because, again, I didn't watch it I didn't really wasn't really a comics guy at the time. So then, you said the Snyder Cut. I went back and I watched the original, and then I watched the Snyder Cut, and it's like night and day. It's not even the same storyline. I don't even know how they're the same movie. I would say that easily the Snyder Cut is the best DC. First of all, Christopher Nolan's trilogy doesn't count in DCEU, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't count?
It doesn't.
Okay, so then, I would say Snyder's Cut is easily the best movie. Like, that movie, it was 4 hours long, 4 and some change, actually. And like, I sat there and I watched every single minute of it. It was amazing. It was just the way they introduced everybody. They gave everybody a backstory, made everybody likable. Hot take, Batman was completely useless in the movie, but that's not even a hot take. He was useless in them. Like, everything he did was redundant. Like, everything he did, they could have just used Cyborg for. But anyway,
Cyborg doesn't turn into a giant jet. Justice, all right.
I mean, yeah, but like that was really it. It was like he didn't contribute anything as Batman. It was just like his money and his accessibility.
And that's the big thing that you put that on Twitter, and I was like, whoa, hold up, Justice. Like, we got like I know you don't understand what Batman is to the Justice League. Batman is not supposed to be the guy who's out there beating the shit out of everybody. Like, the only reason Batman has and is in the Justice League is one, because I mean, in the comic books, dude's a genius, right? In this movie,
master detective.
But the big thing is, my dude funds absolutely everything. Like, just there's multiple scenes in the movie where he was like, how are we going to track it? We need to hack a satellite. He's like, oh, I have some. Really? Yeah, I have six. Like, or what's your superpower? I'm rich.
Rich.
Or like, like that is what Batman is. Like, really, he's not the guy who's on the front line. He's not going toe to toe with Darkseid. That's not Batman.
See, you know what my problem is? is
Mm.
when people tell me something, I take it personally, right? And
Yeah.
then I have to like absolutely destroy whatever your point was, right?
Yeah.
So like when people say, "Oh, Baker Mayfield's better than Josh Allen," now I have to destroy Baker Mayfield's
Yeah.
credibility, right? So
I
it's
will
the
make
same
him
thing.
look like the worst quarterback in the world.
Exactly, right. So it's the same thing
Yeah.
where people is like, "Oh, Batman can beat Superman," da, da. And I'm like, what are you like? That's not even a
Yeah.
logical right. So now, so let me kind of revise what I'm saying.
Mm.
He wasn't useful to the same degree as Superman. And I guess
Yeah.
that's not really fair to make that comparison, but
Hmm.
people were making the comparison. So that's kind of where all this animosity
Yeah.
toward Batman came from. I respect everything he contributes. Is just that like when you say he's more important than Superman, it's kind of like
No.
it throws me
No.
off, right? Exactly. So that was kind of my whole thing with the Snyder cut. It was it was phenomenal. Quite honestly, I loved
Mm.
the origin story for Barry. I wasn't even a Flash fan until this
Mm.
until this movie. If I can be honest, I was not a Flash fan. I
Yeah.
was kind of like, he's okay. But after this movie, I love the Flash. Like I was like, he rewound time, and like as soon as the universe ended, like it was
Dude,
perfect.
that was okay. So I'm a huge fan of The Flash. Not only is one of my favorite DC animated movies, The Flashpoint Paradox, which if you've never seen that, it's amazing. And it's what they're basing the next Flash movie that they're doing with
Where is
Ezra
that?
Miller
How
on.
how do I watch that?
HBO Max, they've got it. The Flashpoint Paradox, where Barry goes back in time and saves his mom from being murdered, and it fucks up the entire timeline. And one of the big things is that like in the show, there's a show on the CW, The Flash. And that was one of the first times I had ever seen The Flash in my life. And I watched the first 3 seasons of that show and fell in love with the Flash character immediately. And when the original Justice League came out, like that Flash, yeah, he was kind of funny and he was like, what is brunch? Like, what even is brunch? It's like breakfast, but you're eating it for lunch. Like it's so stupid. And I felt like they were like ruining the character. I'm like, oh, come on. Barry is one of like the most pinnacle characters in all of the DC universe because of what he can do. And like this movie, the first time I watched the Snyder cut, the ending, which spoilers, if you haven't seen the Snyder cut, it's been out for like 4 months. What are you doing? But legitimately, he sees like he fucks up, and like when he gets shot by the parademon, and you can just tell that my dude like knows that he's about to fail everybody, and then the world ends, and my man goes, you gotta break your one rule. You gotta break your one rule, Barry. You gotta do it. And then he literally reverses time and saves everybody. Like it, like just getting
Nuts.
that character moment. I'm like, how the hell could Joss Whedon go in to seeing that movie and go, yeah, we're gonna cut that out? Like that is a pivotal
I didn't.
character moment for
I was
him.
thinking like I don't remember seeing that part. How do you
No,
cut that part? That was the most awesome part of the whole movie. Like
yeah,
I don't get it. I don't
and
get it.
that's I feel like just that what the DCEU as a whole, and let's bring this back into the question of which is a better movie in the DCEU. And I think it all comes down to your preference. If you weren't a Zack Snyder film type fan, then you probably didn't like the Justice League very much. And the DCEU as a whole is kind of changing with Shazam and Suicide Squad. They're getting a little bit lighter. It's not darker, but it all depends on which one that you really, really fancy. And I love the Suicide Squad. It feels a little bit closer to what Marvel would do, like when it comes to the look of the movie, but then the tone of the movie is fucking amazing. Like, I love just like the gory, stupid jokes. Like, I feel like that the dichotomy of the team and how they, talk to each other, and like if this beach was covered in a bunch of dicks and I had to eat every single one of them for liberty, I would. Like that's like
Right.
stuff like that.
Or when he's like, no one likes to show off. And he's like, they do if it's fucking awesome. He's like,
Yeah,
he's
if
right.
it's cool as
Like,
fuck.
yeah,
Like
he's like, he's
yeah.
right. Damn it. Like I love that shit. I love it. I
I
love it.
I loved it so much, and I think that when you're comparing the two movies, not only are they the two most different things on the planet from each other, but like just going as to what feels more important, the Snyder cut feels like it is like the culmination of like all of these things happening and then expanding the universe in this team getting together of all these superpower. Like, I know you probably don't know all of the stuff about Darkseid, and obviously he wasn't built up as much as Thanos was, but basically Darkseid is the Thanos of the DC universe. Actually, he was created before Thanos in the comic books,
I
but
literally told my
yeah,
little sister that. She's like, "Is
yeah.
that Thanos?" I was like, "Well, he's based, or Thanos was based off of him." But
Yeah,
yeah, go
like
ahead.
he's one of the most super like seeing that and going like there were supposed to be two more movies of this building up this whole fight with Darkseid. Like I'm sad that we're not going to get any of it, and maybe that's something that you don't you weren't aware of, but DC has come out and basically pulled the plug and said, "Dope, like that's not even canon. That movie's not even canon. The one that came out in theaters is." And I just really hope that maybe one day they go back to it. But when you compare the two movies, uh Suicide Squad is great. I like that the way that the DCEU is going forward. They want to make it a little bit more, less Zack Snydery, but you definitely got to tip your hat off to Zack Snyder and how he tipped off his little trilogy of movies with the Snyder Cut, because it is amazing. And to me, is like a 9 to a 9.5 out of 10, just like how Suicide Squad, for its own reasons, is 9 to 8.5 to 9 out of 10. Like they're just both really great movies, and it all just depends on what style you like. So the question is, what movie does everybody think is the greatest in the DCEU? Maybe you like the Suicide Squad. Maybe you like the Snyder Cut. Let us know down below.